The bass hammered against my ribs as I scanned the crowded Nashville bar. My untouched whiskey sweated in my hand. Through the dizzying lights, I found him.
Brett.
He moved with a predator's purpose, his gaze sweeping the room. A cold dread settled in my stomach. For months since I'd fled our house in Franklin with a duffel bag and fading bruises. For months of checking the rearview mirror, buying burner phones, sleeping in motels with a chair under the doorknob. For months of running. And he'd found me. "You look like you've seen a ghost," my friend Jenna shouted over the music. I leaned close. "He's here." Her smile vanished as she followed my gaze. "Sawyer, we have to go now." My legs were locked. Brett's eyes, a chilling blue, found mine. That cold smirk spread across his face, the one I'd seen right before his hand connected with my cheek. "Sawyer, come on." Jenna tugged my arm, but Brett was already cutting through the crowd. The exit was a distant promise, blocked by a wall of bodies.
Panic tightened my chest.
"The balcony lounge," Jenna hissed, pulling me toward a velvet rope. A bouncer let us through. Upstairs was darker, quieter. Leather booths lined the walls. I felt plain in my jeans and tank top. "We'll hide in the bathroom," Jenna said, her grip tight. Then I saw him at the stairs. Brett had talked his way past the bouncer. He was coming. "He's getting through," I whispered. She pulled me deeper, but we were trapped. Terror narrowed my vision. Then my gaze landed on a booth in the deepest corner. 3 men sat there, an island of stillness. The man in the center commanded attention. He was broad-shouldered, with close-cropped hair and a face of sharp angles. His deep brown eyes met mine for a second. I felt utterly seen. Then his focus shifted past me. He'd seen Brett. Without thought, I broke from Jenna and rushed to his table. "Please," I whispered, trembling. "My ex." He understood. He didn't speak. He simply extended his hand, a gesture of absolute authority. His companions shifted, creating space. Brett's voice came from behind me.
"Sawyer.
Time to go." I didn't hesitate. I slid into the booth and found myself directly on the stranger's lap. His body was solid and warm. A strong arm wrapped around my waist, possessive, yet gentle. "Trust me," he murmured against my ear. Brett reached the table, his friendly mask in place. Then his eyes dropped. He saw the black man's arm around me. His smile vanished, replaced by a raw sneer. Hatred twisted his features. "Get up." "Now," Brett spat. The man beneath me tensed. "The lady is staying," he said, his voice calm steel. Brett's face flushed red. "This is none of your business." "It became my business," the man replied. "Leave." Brett took a step forward, fists clenched. The 2 other men stood. Brett's eyes darted to them. The racist fury warred with dawning fear. He was outmatched. "Misunderstanding," Brett stammered, backing up. "Malik," the man said. "See him out." Brett was escorted away, his shoulders hunched, eyes burning with hate. "You're shaking," Solomon observed, his voice dropping back to that private, resonant murmur. His thumb began to trace slow, deliberate, soothing circles on my hip bone through the denim of my jeans. "I'm so sorry for dragging you into this," I said, finally noticing Jenna standing frozen near the balcony railing, her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. "Don't apologize." His tone softened further, meant only for my ears. "That man, your ex, he hurt you." It wasn't a question. It was a grim, settled conclusion drawn from the evidence of my panic, my fear, the way I'd flinched. I managed a small, stiff nod, unable to give voice to the years of eroded confidence, the engineered isolation, the sharp, sudden pains, and the long, aching recoveries. Something dangerous, a flicker of pure, cold fury, passed through Solomon's dark eyes, gone so quickly I thought I might have imagined it. His free hand came up and, with startling tenderness, brushed a stray strand of hair from my damp cheek. "He won't trouble you again." The simple statement was delivered with such bedrock certainty that I believed it instantly, completely. I should have questioned it, should have been horrified by the implications of such a promise from a man like him. Instead, a profound, almost dizzying relief washed through me, so strong it felt like weakness. Jenna approached the table cautiously, visibly intimidated by the men and the energy around Solomon. "Sawyer, are you okay?" Before I could form an answer, Solomon spoke, his gaze still anchored on my face. "Your friend is safe. You can leave your contact information with Malik. We will ensure she is returned home safely." His tone was polite, but it was a dismissal, gentle yet absolute. Jenna looked from my face to Solomon's impassive one, torn between loyalty and fear. I gave her the smallest, most reassuring nod I could muster. "I'll be fine," I told her, forcing a thread of strength into my voice. "I'll call you tomorrow, I promise." After Jenna reluctantly scribbled her number on a cocktail napkin for Malik, Solomon finally allowed me to slide from his lap into the vacant space beside him. However, his arm moved seamlessly from my waist to rest along the back of the booth behind my shoulders, maintaining a firm point of contact, a continuous claim. The booth felt like a sealed capsule, a quiet universe isolating us from the pulsing chaos of the bar below. "Tell me about him," Solomon said after a moment of heavy silence, his full, focused attention on me. It was intensely disorienting, being the sole object of such concentrated intensity. The story came out in fractured, hesitant pieces. 3 years in Franklin. Brett, the charming, up-and-coming loan officer at the local community bank, a pillar of his white, suburban social circle. The slow, insidious control. First my friends were drama, then my job as a receptionist was beneath me, then my family back in Kentucky was holding me back. The first hard shove during an argument about a misplaced utility bill. The escalating, hidden violence, always followed by tearful apologies and expensive, guilt-offering gifts. The 2 cracked ribs from a playful, wrestling match that went too far. The final, crystal-clear realization as I lay on the cool kitchen floor that he would kill me, maybe not on purpose, but inevitably, accidentally on purpose. My escape in the pre-dawn dark with a maxed-out credit card and a single duffel bag, living in anonymous weekly motels along the interstate, taking cash-only cleaning jobs, a ghost constantly looking over her shoulder. "And no one helped you," Solomon said when my voice finally trailed off. His voice held no judgment of me, only a deep, cold contempt for a system, a community, that had failed so utterly. I hid it well, I admitted, staring at my hands twisted together in my lap. "And Brett, he's the golden boy. He coaches a kids' softball team. He's on the community park board. People see the shiny, polite exterior. They don't look for the cracks." I took a shaky breath, and the few times I almost gathered the courage to speak up, he made it very clear his friends on the force wouldn't take kindly to hysterical accusations from a woman with a history of anxiety. Solomon absorbed this, his expression hardening into something like polished granite. "And you ran 4 months ago." I thought I'd cover my tracks. I came to Nashville, tried to lose myself in the city. "Men like him are obsessive," Solomon stated, his voice flat. "Predictable. Weak men who build their own sense of strength solely by preying on those they should protect." The irony of hearing this from a man who undoubtedly lived by a different, harsher, more complex code was not lost on me. Yet, nestled in the curve of his arm, feeling the solid reality of him beside me, I felt safer than I had in my entire adult life. "Why did you help me?" I finally asked, summoning the courage to meet his gaze directly. He seemed to consider the question, or perhaps how much of an answer to give. "Because you chose me," he said finally, the words simple but layered with a meaning I couldn't yet decipher. Had I chosen him? In that split second of animal panic, facing Brett's approach, I had instinctively sought shelter with the most formidable, unshakable presence in the room. What did that say about my instincts?
What did it say about him?
"I should go," I said, though my body made no move to leave. The thought of returning to my dank, lonely motel room off the interstate, with its flickering fluorescent light, the smell of mildew, and the constant, grinding dread, was suddenly and utterly unbearable. "Where?" Solomon asked quietly, his dark eyes seeing right through me. "Back to hiding?" "Jumping at every shadow, counting the days until he inevitably corners you somewhere darker, somewhere with no balcony lounge." I had no answer. My entire existence had been reduced to a bare, grinding survival from one sunrise to the next. "Stay," he said again. This time it was fundamentally different. Not a command, but an offer. A lifeline. "I have a property outside the city. It is secure, private. You would be safe there. You can use the time to breathe, to think, to decide your next move without having to look over your shoulder every moment." Alarm bells, faint but persistent, rang in the back of my mind. I was escaping one controlling, violent man only to potentially place myself under the protection of another, far more dangerous and enigmatic one. "Why would you do that?" Suspicion edged my voice. "You don't know me. You owe me nothing." Solomon studied me for a long, silent moment, his dark eyes inscrutable. "Consider it a mutual arrangement. Your ex saw you with me. He felt my intervention. Word of that will travel. In my world, having a woman under my explicit protection sends a specific, clear message. You gain immediate sanctuary, a fortress. I gain, let's call it, a reinforced reputation, a statement of stability and control." It was brutally, refreshingly transactional. No false promises of knightly chivalry, no gauzy illusions of romance. A straightforward exchange of needs. Still, I hesitated, the scars of the past screaming caution. What would be expected of me? In this arrangement, specifically. His gaze held mine, unwavering and honest in its intensity. Your presence. Your visible association. Nothing more and nothing less, unless you freely choose otherwise. I didn't believe him entirely. Men like Solomon didn't offer something for nothing. Yet, the alternative was the ceaseless, exhausting fear. The running. The inevitable day Brett would corner me in a dark parking lot or a quiet motel hallway. One week, I heard myself say, the decision surprising me as much as it seemed to satisfy him. "I'll stay somewhere safe for 1 week. Then I decide what comes next." Solomon gave a single, slow, deliberate nod, the barest hint of something resembling respect and satisfaction in his eyes. 1 week, he agreed. As he gestured for Malik to prepare to leave, I couldn't shake the profound feeling that I'd just leapt from a crumbling, familiar ledge into the powerful, waiting arms of a different kind of storm. I'd escaped the frying pan and walked deliberately toward the fire. But this fire, at least, provided fierce light, undeniable warmth, and would certainly keep all the other wolves at bay. The vehicle waiting at the curb was a black, armored Suburban with windows tinted to an impenetrable midnight. The interior was a tomb of silence, smelling of rich, conditioned leather and that same subtle, spicy, clean scent that clung to Solomon's skin and clothes. The seats were like soft butter against my bare arms. Solomon held the door for me, then took his place beside me, a careful, respectful distance now between us on the wide bench seat. The performance for Brett's benefit was over. Or perhaps, I thought with a nervous flutter, a new, more complex and sustained performance was just beginning. Malik drove, his eyes constantly, professionally scanning the streets reflected in the rearview mirror, his large hands steady on the wheel. We left the neon glow and chaotic noise of downtown Nashville behind, crossing the wide, dark expanse of the Cumberland River and heading into the rolling, wooded hills of wealthy Williamson County. We passed through a discreet, manned gate of wrought iron and native stone, then wound along a long, private drive flanked by tall pines, finally stopping before a stunning, low-slung contemporary home. It was all sharp, clean angles, vast sheets of glass, and walls of native limestone, blending into the shadowed landscape rather than dominating it. It spoke of immense, quiet wealth, but also of refined taste and a deep desire for privacy. Solomon led me to the imposing, heavy front door, which was opened before we reached it by a woman in her late 50s. She had a calm, intelligent, no-nonsense face, her dark hair elegantly streaked with silver and pulled into a smooth twist at the nape of her neck. She wore a simple, well-cut linen dress. "Irene," Solomon greeted her, and his tone warmed perceptibly, a hint of genuine affection there. "This is Sawyer. She will be our guest for a time." Irene's sharp, kind eyes took me in with a single, comprehensive glance that held no judgment, only swift, professional assessment. "Of course. The guest suite in the East Wing is prepared and aired. I've just turned down the bed." "Thank you." Solomon turned to me, his hand returning lightly to the small of my back. "Irene manages the household. If you need anything at all, she is the one to ask. She is unimpeachably discreet and capable." Irene offered a small, genuine smile that softened her efficient demeanor. "You must be exhausted, Miss Sawyer. Can I bring you anything to settle you? Herbal tea? A light snack?" The simple, kind offer in the midst of this surreal, high-stakes night nearly broke the dam of my control. I couldn't remember the last time someone had offered me sustenance without an accompanying price, emotional or otherwise. "Just some water, please," I managed, my throat parched with spent adrenaline. "I'll show you to your room," Solomon said, his guiding touch both possessive and protective as he led me inside. The interior of the house was a masterpiece of minimalist, warm elegance. Wide plank, reclaimed oak floors, soaring ceilings with exposed beams, walls adorned with what looked like original, large-scale abstract paintings in muted, earthy tones. Everything was clean, uncluttered, serene. It felt powerfully masculine but not cold. It felt strong but not ostentatious. This was not the garish lair of a cartoonish villain. It was the calm, controlled home of a man of serious, quiet influence and formidable will. The guest suite was on the second floor, its wall of glass doors overlooking a dark, whispering forest. It was larger than my last 3 motel rooms combined. A sleek platform bed dressed in crisp, white Italian linens, a sitting area with a deep, dove-gray sofa positioned before a modern fireplace, shelves with a few carefully chosen art books. The door to the bathroom stood ajar, revealing a spa-like space of honed marble and polished concrete. "This is too much," I whispered, overwhelmed by the stark contrast between this serene luxury and the gritty, fearful existence I'd just left. "It is secure," Solomon replied, as if that were the only metric that truly mattered. He walked to the glass doors, drawing back a sheer curtain to reveal a small, private balcony. This balcony does not connect to any other. The glass is ballistic-grade, laminated. There is only one entrance to this room. He turned to face me, his expression solemn. "You are safe here, Sawyer. This is the most important thing." I raised an eyebrow, a flicker of my old self peeking through the fear. "Ballistic grade? Should I be expecting a siege, Solomon?" A ghost of a smile, there and gone, touched his lips. "I expect everything, Sawyer. Preparation is the reason I am still here and thriving when others are not." A soft, precise knock at the door. Irene entered with a tray, a crystal carafe of ice water, a single heavy glass, and a small plate of delicate, buttery shortbread cookies. "I thought you might want something light," she said, setting it on a side table with efficient grace. "You'll find a robe and nightclothes in the bath. I've taken the liberty of arranging for a few day-to-day items to be delivered tomorrow, based on a general estimate. We can adjust as needed." "Thank you, but I really don't need you to." "It is already done," Solomon interjected smoothly, his tone leaving no room for protest. "Irene has impeccable judgment.
Trust it.
It is one of her many gifts." Irene gave another small, knowing smile. "The house phone by the bed connects directly to the kitchen. Please, don't hesitate to use it for anything, any hour." With a final, appraising glance that was both kind and protective, she withdrew, closing the door softly behind her. The reality of my situation finally crashed over me with its full, sobering weight. I was in a stranger's fortress, a dangerous man's private domain. I had no phone, no wallet, no car keys, no friends within calling distance, no clear exit strategy. I was utterly dependent on his whim. Yet, Paradoxically, every fiber of my being, every instinct that had been honed by months of survival, hummed with a certainty I hadn't felt since childhood. I was safe here. Safer than I had ever been. "You are overthinking again," Solomon observed from where he stood by the window, those dark, perceptive eyes missing nothing. "It's a lot to process," I said, running a hand over the cool, expensive linen of the duvet. "I don't make a habit of throwing myself into mysterious strangers' laps and then going home with them to their fortresses." The ghost of a smile returned, lingering a little longer this time. "I should hope not." The quiet, undeniable possessiveness in those 3 words sent an unexpected, warm shiver down my spine, confusing my fear with something else entirely. I turned away from his gaze, needing to break its intensity, and walked to the window, staring out at the infinite blackness of the woods. "What happens tomorrow?" I asked, needing a framework, a rule to cling to in this surreal new reality. He approached, stopping just behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, the solidity of his presence, without him actually touching me. "Tomorrow you rest. You recover. You sleep until you are no longer tired. The day after, if you wish, Irene can take you into the city for anything you require. Clothing, toiletries, whatever you need to feel settled." "I can't afford to go shopping, Solomon," I said, a flush of shame heating my cheeks. "The little cash I had is back at the motel." "Consider it part of our arrangement," he said, his voice gentle but firm, brooking no argument. "Your visible association with me, should we need to present it, requires a certain presentation. It is not about vanity. It is about credibility and, in its own way, security. It is for your safety as much as anything else." I turned to face him then, finding him closer than I'd anticipated. The subtle scent of him was dizzying. "So, I'm to be your accessory. Your polished, well-dressed arm candy. Is that it?" Something fierce and hot flashed in his eyes, there and gone in an instant. "You are to be safe, Sawyer," he said, his voice dropping, gaining a rough edge. "The rest is background noise, set dressing for anyone who might be watching. Your safety is the only non-negotiable point." He searched my face, his expression unreadable again. "Why does my safety matter to you?" I pressed, needing a real answer beyond the transactional one, beyond the strategic reputation. "The truth, please." Solomon was silent for a long, heavy moment, as if weighing how much of his truth to share with a near stranger. "When I saw you tonight, you were a rabbit in a snare, cornered, with a hawk circling. Yet, instead of freezing in terror or pleading uselessly, you assessed the entire field in a heartbeat and you ran. Not blindly, but directly toward what you perceived as the greater power. You chose the lion to escape the wolf." His voice dropped further, became almost intimate. That kind of instinct, that clear-eyed, ruthless will to survive against any odds, to make the hard, counterintuitive choice, it is rare. It is worthy of respect, and it is worthy of protection. "I'm not a fascinating survival specimen," I said, lifting my chin despite the nervous flutter in my stomach. "No," he agreed softly, his gaze unwavering. "You are a woman who has been failed by every system and person who is ever supposed to protect her. And you deserve a fortress, not a hiding place." He took a deliberate step back, re-establishing the careful, respectful distance between us. "Rest, Sawyer. Lock this door tonight if it makes you feel more secure. No one will disturb you." With that, he was gone, his footsteps silent on the thick, plush rug. I stood frozen in the center of the beautiful room for a full minute, listening to the profound silence, before moving mechanically to the door. The lock was heavy, a solid, polished steel deadbolt. The definitive thunk of its sliding home was profoundly reassuring, even as I knew in my bones it was a token gesture, a psychological comfort. If Solomon wanted entry, this lock, this door, this entire wing would not stop him. The bathroom was a spa-like oasis of calm. A deep, freestanding soaking tub, a vast rainfall shower. True to Irene's word, a silk kimono-style robe and a matching, sleeveless nightgown hung on a discreet hook, their tags still attached. They were, of course, exactly my size. The intimate precision of that detail should have disturbed me, felt like a violation. Instead, in the midst of this bizarre, terrifying situation, it felt like an astonishing kind of care, a promise that my needs, however small, would be seen to. I stood under the scalding shower for a long time, trying to wash the smell of fear, cheap beer, and Brett's cologne from my skin and my memory. When I finally emerged, wrapped in the impossibly soft, cool silk of the robe, I felt a fragile semblance of my old self begin to return. The nightgown slipped over my head like a whisper. Sleep, however, remained a distant, unreachable country. I lay in the vast, unfamiliar bed, staring at the intricate patterns of moonlight and shadow the trees cast on the high ceiling, my mind churning like a storm-tossed sea. Just hours ago, I was a nobody, a ghost, cleaning rooms at a highway motel for cash. Now I was in a multi-million-dollar architectural marvel, under the explicit protection of a man who could dispatch my tormentor with a word, who moved through the world with a quiet, terrifying authority. A man who asked for nothing but my presence, who provided unparalleled luxury and security without any immediate, obvious demand. It made me more suspicious, not less. What was the long game? When sleep finally, fitfully claimed me in the small hours, my dreams were a turbulent, confusing jumble of dark, watchful eyes, gentle hands that held hidden, formidable strength, and the sound of Brett's hate-filled voice echoing in the distance. Morning light spilled into the room, soft and new. For a moment, I forgot where I was, the bed too comfortable, the silence too deep. Then it all came back. The club, Brett's hate, Solomon's arms, this safe, silent house. A gentle knock. "Breakfast is ready when you are," Irene called through the door. The armoire held simple, perfect clothes in my size. The careful detail felt like a promise, not an intrusion. I dressed and went downstairs. Sunlight filled the morning room. Irene smiled, pouring coffee. "He asked me to take care of you," she said. We spoke of small, peaceful things. But underneath, I felt the turn my life had taken. The running was over. The fear was gone. I walked into the garden, the cool air clean in my lungs. Brett's rage was a distant memory. Solomon's calm certainty was my new reality. He had offered me a deal, a fortress, a performance. But standing there in the quiet light, I knew it had become something real. The story of the woman on the run had ended. Here, in the calm at the center of his storm, my new story was just beginning. And I was finally ready to see what happened next.